never had a daughter before. And I'm thinking, oh, because the pants are down below her. So brilliant idea. I said, honey, put your feet on my neck. I'm holding her in front of me. Put your feet in the neck. That way you're in the seating position and it'll go down, I think. But anyway, she puts her feet on my neck and I go, okay, you can pee now. She starts to pee and it's like, oh, in my face, in my mouth, just pissing all over. And now I'm screaming even more. My eyes are burning from her urine. My leg is bleeding. I'm covered in the cesspool shit that I fell into. And she peed all over my face and her own pants. She's crying. I take off her pants.
What's doing, everybody? I'm Alec Lace. Thank you for watching First Class Fatherhood. Today's guest on the podcast is legendary comedian Howie Mandel. Howie is widely known as being the host of Deal or No Deal, as well as being a judge on America's Got Talent. He recently launched a new podcast of his own, along with his daughter, Jackelyn Schultz, titled Howie Mandel Does Stuff. The link to his podcast is down there in the description. While you're down there, smack the subscribe button, tap the like, and let's jump into it right now with Howie Mandel on First Class Fatherhood. Joining me now, First Class Father, Howie Mandel. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Thank you. I've been in First Class Fatherhood for the last 36 years. Well, I don't know if I've been in first class. Economy. I think economy. There has not been an extra meal. My seats are the same size as anybody else's seats. So I think I'm in regular class as far as being a father.
Well, today you get the upgrade. You got First Class Fatherhood title for now. So we'll cruise at that altitude for right here. Let's start it like this. How many kids do you have and how old are they?
I have 3 children and 2 grandchildren. My children are 36, 31, and 28 or 27, and 2 grandchildren, 6 and 5. And I have been told that they're all mine. I spent a lot of time on the road, and I haven't talked to Maury Povich at all. So I'm just assuming this is good information.
All right, well, we'll run with that. If you could, Howie, please, for the couple of people that maybe don't have access to a television, just hit my listeners with a little bit about your background and what you do here.
I am, for those that are just listening and not sure who I am, I have been America's sexual role model for the last, I'm hoping that the couple of people who don't know who I am will believe me. I've been doing whatever I do. I don't really know what I do, but I've been doing whatever I do for almost 45 years now. I started and continue, except not this year, as a stand-up comic and doing AGT, Deal or No Deal. I was on St. Elsewhere. I've been around for a long time, just trying to earn a living and feed my kids.
Yeah, obviously you've had a lot of success with it, Howie, along the way here. So about how old were you when you first became a dad, and how did becoming a father kind of change your perspective on life?
Oh, it changed everything. I was 29 the first time we had our child. And, I thought that I would one day grow up, get married, have kids, and teach them about the world. What actually happened is I grew up, got married, had kids, and they continued to teach me about the world. I knew nothing. And you don't know that until you are responsible for another human being. And you see how what you say and how you act and what you do affects them greatly and affects who they become and who they are. And there isn't a person out there that at one time has thought, oh my God, I'm my mom. Oh my God, I'm my father. And that's just, it's not because of things you were told or taught. It's because of where you were in proximity to your father. You just become more about, how they act than what they say. I also changed my priority, and I think having a kid changes everybody. Up until you have a child, it's I, me, my. And then when you have a child, it's them, her. And what's good for them. Every decision I make is with my children in mind. I decided to stop doing movies because, in the early 80s, I did a bunch of movies back to back. Not fantastic ones, but nevertheless, they were films where I had to leave home for 3 months at a time and live someplace else. And I kept missing. I'll tell you, it was on the set. I did a movie called Little Monsters with Freddie Savage, and I played a monster. I was in makeup. My oldest at the time was probably 2 years old, and I was living in Wilmington, North Carolina. and I was away, and my wife flew out with my baby girl. And number one, I was dressed as a monster, so she screamed every time I was in the same room, wanted nothing to do with me. And I had been gone for 2 months, and when she brought her out, she had teeth that she didn't have when I left. And I didn't like the idea of going away for these, extended periods of time where you come back and your kid doesn't even look the same and has teeth they didn't have and saying words they didn't say. And the hair is longer than, so I just didn't, I wanted to, so I stayed in stand-up and television. And at least for the first child, she traveled with me. She didn't know there was a kitchen. Everything was a truck stop at 3 a.m.
Yeah, really good stuff, Howie. And what would you say then were the top values that you had hoped to instill in your kids as they were growing up? And how did that kind of play out as they became adults themselves?
The top values for me is always the number one value has always been respect, and not respect for me, just general respect for humanity and other people and people older than you. I think that what has happened in the vein of comedy and television, I'm a lot older than you, but I'm in my 60s now. But, when in my generation, people grew up with like Leave It to Beaver and, they would Mr. So-and-so, not that you have to call somebody Mr. So-and-so, but so many kids today have no respect and not taught respect, because you look at sitcoms and everybody, even no matter if you're 7 years old, you talk like a Borscht Belt comic to your parents. They say something to you and then you have a funny, sarcastic joke back, and that's how kids are. And I just wanted them to, they've all three of them ended up going to college. I don't have a GED, but they respected their professors and teachers and just other humanity, and I think that the problem today is a lot of kids that were so coddled, they feel entitled and like they deserve this. And I've become, I had a hard time. My first daughter, Jackelyn, her name's Jackelyn Schultz now. She does a podcast with me, which is launching on April 13th, me and her. But, and we're like best friends now. I mean, she's and she's the mother of 2, and I'm so proud of her. And she became a teacher, but there was like 5 years of hatred. She hated me, and it is really, and I think it's kind of normal. There was from about 15 to 20, there was absolutely no respect. You go from being the apple of your little girl's eye to being dumber than a rock. There wasn't anything I could say that didn't stop the rolling of the eyes, and just the embarrassment of my existence was, tough to take.
Yeah, and Howie, I'm right there. I got 4 kids myself. My oldest is just about to turn 15 in a couple of weeks here, and my youngest is my only girl. I got 3 boys, and then my girl is only 6 years old. So I'm already kind of like not looking forward to that time when she hits that dating scene and does all these things. So you've already been there and been through that. What kind of advice did you have for your kids when they did get eligible? What kind of advice did you give them when they approached that dating scene?
Well, the dating scene was hell for me. I grew up with just a brother. I knew nothing about girls. I knew what I was like. So to send my little baby girl out into this world where there might be people like me was the most terrifying thing I could ever think of. So I can't tell you how many times I maybe went overboard, but she ended up, not sharing information which was probably smart on her part about where she was and what she was doing, but I would always find out. And I can't tell you how many parties I broke into and physically pulled her out and brought her home to her embarrassment. I'll give you one little story that was a very dad story. We were really, cognizant of what was going on amongst her friends and at school. And so when she would go to school, we would kind of see what she had been doing on her computer, or we went through her drawers. And one time I go through the drawer while she's at school, and I find a little container, which was used for film, a little film capsule, which they don't use camera film. But I opened it up and I look, and there's pot in there, so I was livid, and I got into my car and I drove to the school, and I went to the office and I said, "Where is Jackie Mandel right now?" And they look her up. No, she's in history class on the 2nd floor at 20, whatever they said the room number was. And they couldn't even get the room number out. I was like running down the hallways, the lady from the office going, sir, you can't go, you can't go, you can't. I wouldn't hear anything. I went up the stairs. I got to the second floor. I get to her classroom. I look in the little window of the door. They're obviously taking a test. I open the door and I don't give a shit. I just go, Jackie, come with me. And she's like in terror, like, what the F are you, Dad, this is so, what's wrong? And I go, you will see, young lady. And I grab her by the arm and I walk her down. The lady from the office still there going, where are you taking her? I'm taking her. Never mind. This is my daughter. Never mind. I'm taking her. And I took her downstairs and I put her in the car and she goes, what are you doing, Dad? What are you doing? This is the most embarrassing day of my life. I go, you will see, young lady. And I drive her home and she goes, I can't believe this is happening. And I go, get out of the car. Go into your room. She goes into her room and I walk into the room with her. Then I grab that capsule, that film capsule, and I open it and I hand it to her and I go, young lady, what is in that? And she goes, well, that's my fish food. And I go, correct. And I put the top on, I put it back in the drawer. I grabbed her arm and said, get in the car. You got to go to history class. And I drove her home. It's like, I tried to be a good dad. I was just an idiot.
Oh, man, that's hilarious. I would love to hear her side of that story, too. I'm sure it would be great to see if you guys get into the podcast with that. Now, you mentioned it there. You got the Howie Mandel Does Stuff. You're hosting it with your daughter. What has it been like for you? Well, first of all, what can the listeners expect to hear when they tune into the new podcast? And what is it like? What has the cohesiveness been like for you to work on this project with your daughter?
It has been the thrill of my life, and we're having such a good time. And it's not like other podcasts. It's called Howie Mandel Does Stuff. And I'm just doing all the stuff I've done while they were going up. So it's me and my daughter. Whether a listener wants us to do a prank call, we do a prank call. She's a very funny, very smart lady who's a mom and a teacher. We do that. We bring other family members. Like, I'll give you an example. Her brother, my two girls are married. Her brother, the 31-year-old, is not married and is living the life. But Jackie has... unbeknownst to him, well, it's beknownst to him now, she signed him up on every dating site and she communicates with these people and sets up dates for him. So sometimes we call him when they connect and do that. So we're trying to marry off my son on the show. We're inappropriate a lot, a fun thing that we do in our family, and it's made its way to the show. My wife, they'll say a word that isn't family friendly, and my wife doesn't know what it is, and it's fun to get her in public to kind of, which we will do on the podcast. But like, I don't know how it came up at a family dinner. We were out in a restaurant and somebody mentioned the word taint, and my wife didn't know what taint meant, and my kids convinced her to ask the waiter.
Oh, man.
So just good family fun for everyone.
Yeah, it sounds like a banger for sure. I'm going to include the link in the description of this podcast episode so my listeners can get over there, tap it, and check it out. I'm looking forward to listening myself. And I'm curious to ask you, Howie, I know obviously you're known for the OCD with the germs and the whole bit. Obviously, you could have been, Dr. Fauci could have just said, hey, be like Howie Mandel for the next 6 months and we'll all be okay. But I'm curious with you. One of the things when the kids are young, I know it's a while back for you here, but potty training is a big thing. We make a big deal out of it, and the kids go, no more diapers. But when we're out in public, we're at the restaurant, they always seem to have to go to the bathroom as soon as the food comes or at the most inopportune time. How did you kind of navigate those situations where the kids had to use I'm a guy, I put down all the toilet paper on the seat. I put a wad in there for a splash protection, the whole bit. So I get a little chaotic myself. How did you kind of navigate that scene with the kids?
Not well. I tell a story. Jackie also. Potty training was really important. You know, when you're a new parent, even more, my wife had all the books on it. We would try things with my son. It was kind of easy because for him and I, we would just, I'd make little boats in the toilet and we would shoot boats. So that but now he's 31 and we put Cheerios in and you have to shoot the Cheerios. But now he's 31 and he still can't piss without Cheerios. But I remember my daughter, I've told this story many times, but I'll tell it here. That my daughter was being potty trained, the first one, Jackie, who's doing the podcast with me. And my wife did it all. I had absolutely nothing to do with it. And the first time after she was doing potty training, it was the first time that my wife, I said, let me take Jackie out for a ride. You know, let's go someplace. I haven't been with the baby. This father-daughter bonding. And so I took my daughter out for a ride. I'm in a convertible and we're on the Ventura Freeway in LA, and we're driving. And within 10 minutes, she goes, Daddy, I got to go to the potty. And I go, really? I'll go home. Let's go home. She goes, no, I'm going to go now. I'm going to go now. And I go, you're going to go now? No. Wait. And then she starts crying because I started panicking. I'm not comforting when I'm panicked. So I just go, okay. I got an idea. And on the freeway, I pulled over to the soft shoulder on the freeway. And there was like hedges and trees at the side. So I figure I'll just take her into the trees. We'll rough it. So I get out of the car. I undo her. She's in a car seat. I take her out of the car seat and I go step into the trees, into the tree line, because I want to get out. I don't want to be out in the open. So I step in the tree line and I didn't realize the tree was on the edge of a ravine. So when I stepped through the trees with my baby girl, I slipped and started sliding down this ravine. I'm holding the baby. I'm trying to protect her head and everything. I'm holding her, but I'm screaming too. And she's screaming and I'm sliding through mud and I'm sliding through like moss and I'm getting caught in twigs and my pants got caught on a stick and my pants ripped and so did my skin there. My leg is bleeding. And then I land at the bottom of the ravine into this cesspool puddle of floating murky crap. And I'm like deep I'm holding her above the water, but I'm bleeding. And I don't know if I'm in a sewage dump. I don't know where the hell I am. And I got this baby crying and she goes, I'm going to pee. And I go, don't pee. So my wife had put her in a jumpsuit in a one piece, so I undo the front and I pull it down around her ankles and I hold her under the arms out in front of me. And I said, go ahead, pee. I'm holding her in she can pee into this. I'm standing in an effing toilet, so you go pee. And she goes, no, I'm going to dirty my pants. Like I'd never had a daughter before. And I'm thinking, because the pants are down below her. So brilliant idea. I said, honey, put your feet on my neck. I'm holding her in front of me. Put your feet in the neck. That way you're in the seating position and it'll go down, I think. But anyway, she puts her feet on my neck and I go, okay, you can pee now. She starts to pee and it's like, in my face, in my mouth, just pissing all over. And now I'm screaming even more. My eyes are burning from her urine. My leg is bleeding. I'm covered in the cesspool shit that I fell into. And she peed all over my face and her own pants. She's crying. I take off her pants because they're wet with urine and she's naked. She goes, I want to go home. I go, so do I. And now I start climbing with this naked little girl. I'm trying to climb up the hill. Every time I get about 5 feet off the hill, I'm holding on a twig. It breaks and I slide down on my stomach back into the puddle for a half hour. And now she's covered in mud. I got blood and urine and shit all over me. And I finally get up the hill. It takes like a half hour and I come like 100 yards from where the car is. I come out of the trees. And I come out of the trees. I'm covered in mud. I'm totally unrecognizable. Everything's ripped and bleeding and urine. And there's a naked little girl crying and screaming. I come out through the trees. I'm nowhere near a car. And I'm holding this baby who's crying and screaming. And a car slows down, looks at me and says, are you Howie Mandel? And I go, no. So that's my potty training story. I was never allowed. I took her home. I put her back in the seat and I drove home. My wife was waiting at the front door. And you can imagine, I pull up, we left like 1 hour ago. And now she's naked, covered in mud. And I'm like ripped and beat up. My wife is like screams, goes, what happened? And I'm going, never mind.
Man, that would have made one hell of a TikTok video, for God's sake. I didn't expect you to have like a potty training PTSD story to hit me with there. That was pretty good. I can only imagine.
No pun intended with your PTSD.
Well, listen, I wanted to bring it back in here to you as a dad as well with the kids growing up. What type of disciplinarian were you as a dad, Howie? And is that different than the discipline style that you grew up with?
I grew up in a respectful house. There was no swearing, bad words in the house. I was very, my reputation precedes me. So people think that I'm silly or funny. But when it came to my kids, I was a very serious parent, and we had rules and curfews and honest. They had to be no lying, no swearing, no, I just think that rules are really important to me as a parent, because I think the guidelines and rules is what teaches respect. So, I know that a lot of parents want to be their kids' friends. I think they can make their own friends. They don't need another friend. They need a parent. They need somebody you want. And I think it worked. And I'm so proud of all three of my children. But you want your children to be able to survive without you and flourish. And all three of my kids have grown up, even though I'm doing the podcast with my daughter. I mean, she's got her master's in urban education and taught in the inner city for 10 years and got married and had her own kids. She's accomplished, and she's does very well as an influencer. Jackelyn Schultz, you can follow her on her different platforms. She's already successful. They don't need me. And so is my son. And so is my other daughter, who's a doctor of physical therapy. And my son does content, some of the biggest content you see online from influencers. He creates it. He does this. He's created a business where he gives them content and shares in the ad revenue. So my kids learned how to be they're self-motivated. They don't need me anymore, and they kind of understand how the system works and how to play within the rules and win.
Yeah, I think it's awesome to hear you say that too, Howie. I talk a lot on this podcast here how we have a fatherless crisis going on. We have so many kids growing up without a father in the home, and we have this every kid gets a trophy philosophy that I think is really just kind of crippling our society when they don't have. I mean, I was a kid who grew up like, just wait till your father gets home was kind of enough to set me straight. And I think without that kind of being reinforced, I think we were seeing the results of that play out all over the place.
But that's rules, and that's respect for the rules, even if the respect is fear. Like you just can't. We used to, when the kids became teenagers, I almost called the cops on other parents because they would go to somebody's house and I'd find out they were drinking and the parent was home, and then the parent would say to me, well, they're going to drink anyway. Isn't it better that they drink under my roof? And I go, no, the law is they're underage, and if you're showing them that you don't abide by the law of our society, then they'll find ways, those loopholes and ways to break the law and do something maybe dangerous that could be life-threatening. So no. So, I used to warn other parents that that's the kind of parent I was. One more time and I will call the police if I hear alcohol in this house.
Yeah, good stuff. And then obviously you've done a lot over your career here. The Deal or No Deal, America's Got Talent. Do your kids have like a favorite thing that you do? Do they have a certain show that they really enjoyed? Have they given you any feedback? Are they critics of your work? How do they kind of respond to the stuff that you put out there?
I don't know that they do. When you grow up in wherever you grow up, that's the way it is, and they used to come home like so excited to tell me, Josh's dad, what Josh's dad does? I go, what? He sells cars. All those cars that you see on Josh's dad sells those. So, they had nothing to compare it to. You would think that it would be cool. Oh, my dad's a comedian, or my dad's on a TV show, or they liked Bobby's World, my oldest, Jackie, because, I got all the stories. A lot of the stories that I wrote on those were based in reality, were based on what my kids were doing. In fact, Bobby's best friend was called Jackie, which was based on Jackie. So they would say things and I would write it down, and then they'd see it in the show, or they would do things and then see it in the show. So that was kind of fun for them, Bobby's World. But for the most part, they don't, I'll go, I'm doing a show tonight. You want to go? And they'll go, nah, I'm going to a friend's. Which I like, I don't want them to be. So they're not, maybe in adulthood, maybe I hope they appreciate me as a father more than as somebody in show business.
Yeah, very well said. And then the last thing I'm going to hit you with here, Howie, I love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast, what type of advice do you have for that new dad or for that about to be father who's out there listening?
It's not what you say, it's what you do. So, if you lose your temper, then you're teaching your child that losing the temper is the way to go when things aren't going your way. If you're unreasonable, they'll learn to be unreasonable. They learn more by seeing and being in the moment. And those moments are the most frustrating moments, because usually the bad behavior, and I'm talking about as a father, your bad behavior comes out of being angry. But, I ended up going to therapy. I was going to therapy anyway on other things, but never act angry. Like if you're angry, take every ounce of strength you have and separate yourself from that anger before you react. if you can stay calm and you could set an example, somebody once told me, here's my last analogy, but this is what fatherhood is like. Somebody once told me that, I was flying privately someplace and they go, you got the best pilot. And I said, how do I know I have the best pilot? I'm in planes all the time. Why is this pilot the best? They go, you don't want to know it's the best pilot. And I go, what does that mean? They go, because pilots are tested, twice a year on whatever plane they're using. And what they do is they go in a simulator and they'll give you a flame out. They'll stop the engine. They'll give you severe turbulence. They'll turn the plane upside down. And that's their test. Their test is to see how calm they can right the plane or get, safely landed or whatever. It's how they act when there's trouble. And the truth is, in the most frustrating moments, in the emergencies, in the frustrating moments, it's how those moments will be indelible in your kid's memory and how they act in the future forever. So it's not the fun times. It's not the cuddly, wonderful, perfect time. It's the times that are really hard where you have to have the most control and figure it out.
Yeah.
Because that's how they'll act. Because shit happens to fathers, to kids, to anybody who's alive. And how do they deal with shit? And that's what your job as a father is show them how you deal with shit.
Yeah, very well said. I love the message. This has been an honor for me. I got to say, Howie Mandel, you're a first-class father all the way. And thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time here on First Class Fatherhood.
Thank you. Thank you, buddy. Thanks for having me on.